Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in just a minute here. But I wanted to welcome you and oops. And you're not seeing
Right.
my screen, right?
No,
Just give me a heads up once you can see it.
I see your screen.
Okay, awesome. You're seeing the
It's just not
presentation
presenter
here?
mode, right?
All right, awesome. Well, like I said, welcome to everyone present, and anyone who's going to watch our recording after the fact. We're really excited to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about what you need to know before you sell your business. But I wanted to say a very special thank you to Kelly Steyn, a real estate agent I've known for years. For being present and just talking this out with me because we had an awesome interaction not that long ago of just how there's a lot of overlap between real estate and businesses that are for sale and selling. And so we're going to have that conversation today. I will share a little bit with you about my tips and tricks for selling businesses and just what you need to know before you enter that process. So in just a moment here, my screen is not advancing. So Kelly Steyn is a licensed realtor with eXp. We first met, I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago. Is that right, Kelly?
Yeah, 5 years
Yeah.
ago now at this point.
Yeah. And so we were both at Keller Williams, where I was the chief operating officer starting teams through our flagship team called Philly Living, and Kelly was our sales manager. So I got to know her very well on the leadership team through that. And I'm just so thankful she was in my life. Everything I know about real estate, I probably learned from Kelly. But Kelly, wouldn't you say, is it true, if I remember correctly, you started out selling boats? Is that right?
Well, that's funny that you bring that up. I
Yeah.
sold boats while I was starting my career in the resale side of real estate. So I started in 2007 as new construction, and
New
then I
construction.
moved to resale and as an independent agent in 2010. And that year, I guess it was that year, yeah. For part-time job, I was the assistant to a boat, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
sales company.
And
And
I knew
so,
about the new construction. So, when it comes to Kelly, she knows a lot about real estate. So, I was excited to do this with her and talk it through with her because you're going to see a lot of parallels to real estate and selling businesses, like I said. So
yeah,
thanks for being here.
yeah, thanks for doing this. I think it's a great segue of real estate and, small business. We both love small businesses and advocating for them and, um, making sure that their hard work when they sell it, that they get some money for all that hard work that they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of my background, I spent 20 years in marketing and operations across so many different industries. Like I said, I came to real estate about 5 years ago, was working with real estate teams and various aspects of real estate. I became a licensed agent not that long ago, and I had previous experience selling businesses privately. And then most recently, I acquired Janie Business Group, which is a business brokerage listing businesses for sale and selling them privately. So that is a little bit about my background and why I wanted to share today. And we'll get more into it, I'm sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Janie Business Group. It was owned by Harry Jeffries and Larry Etherton, two longtime real estate friends who founded this business in their retirement back in 2014. The business has about nine associates, so we work together pretty well in terms of finding buyers for everyone's listings and really just collaborating on the listings and the businesses for sale. So if you want to check it out, go check out jebusinessgroup.com and you'll see all of our associates and how we operate. We do also do marketing and operations consulting, which I'll mention a little bit later in terms of what a business that is getting ready to sell might need in those regards. Um, So, like Kelly and I mentioned, we want you to know, we want you to be prepared when you're selling your business. So, today we're going to cover a lot about process, a lot about what to expect when working with a broker, and some tips for ensuring that you get a really good, transaction in terms of selling your business. So, first up, the selling process. What I want you to know is that you're going to work with a broker. If you chose to work with a brokerage like J&E Business Group, you would be working with them on an accurate valuation of your business. And we're going to get into what that looks like in just a minute. But also, you're going to be working with them towards confidential marketing. And what that means is we're going to list your business privately. When we bring buyers to the table, they don't necessarily know what business uh, is selling, but they might know the industry that it's within. And so we're working on confidential marketing up front until a non-disclosure is signed. And after that point, we also have marketing materials and packages that we develop that are about the business and have all the nitty-gritty details, the financial packages, and that sort of thing involved. So you will work with a broker who's experienced in marketing your business, both private, confidentially and privately.
Kristi, can I interrupt you?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
You, thinking of this, like, so if you're thinking of buying a business too, you want to hook up with a broker sooner than later because they know of these opportunities, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we help businesses sell. We also help them help individuals buy. So we have buyer representatives on our team that will also work with you to find the right business, whether it's a listing that we have or it's a business that we know is available on the market.
Okay.
Good question. And yeah, feel free to ask me any questions so we can learn more. Um, so next up, another aspect of what a broker does is really work with the buyers to qualify them for the seller on behalf of the seller, and we negotiate on behalf of the seller, just like a listing agent would on the real estate side. So in terms of qualifying them, we are understanding their financials, where their payment would come from for acquiring the business, working with SBA lenders and attorneys and all kinds of things that interface with your business transaction. So we're working towards that smooth closing on your behalf. In fact, we do see a lot of people who have tried to sell their business on their own and end up coming to us because it's a lot of conversations, it's a lot of negotiating, it's a lot of things, especially if they're trying to sell their business quietly behind the scenes. If they have a team, they are coming to us for that reason because we'll handle everything quietly without their employees knowing.
That makes sense. And even like if they want to sell it like to family or long-term partners or something, that would make sense to still have you involved, right? To get
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
all.
Yep. And just helping to verify, looking at the valuation, which is perfect timing because I just wanted to make sure that you know of some details in terms of the valuation and what to prepare for. If you're selling, you're going to make sure that there's a number of things that you're going to bring to the broker when they do the valuation for you. And the first one is 3 years of the most recent tax returns there. That's really what we like to look at, but we can look at the profit and loss statements. It's going to be really important. You want to make sure that your profit and loss statements match your tax returns. That's going to be crucial for the buyer. But we're going to look at those to develop the valuation for you. You're also going to want to make sure that if you have any FF&E, which stands for fixtures, and equipment, that you have that outlined as well. Sometimes that can take a while, so we like to make sure that our sellers are aware of that. Um, and then estimated value of inventory on hand in any given week if you're, an inventory-based company. And also employee roles and responsibilities. We deal with companies that it's just one person, but also businesses that are quite larger. And so the buyer is going to be interested in knowing what kind of employees are involved in the company, whether they're part-time, full-time. But just a note here, you want to make sure that when you're sharing information with a broker and or a buyer, that you're not disclosing the employee name. So you want to make sure those are redacted. So just as you're putting that together, keep that in mind. And also, a broker is going to want to, be curious about your customer base, whether it's, a residential or commercial based company, whether you have returning customers or new customers, what percentage, anything that would be helpful in terms of data on your business and your customer base will be really interesting to the potential buyer and also to the broker. So just a few things that you'll want to make sure you're collecting ahead of time before coming to the broker.
Would they want, I'm thinking of myself as a buyer, like multiple years of explanation of customer base data?
I don't think so. Just
Okay.
overall data or information that would be helpful to the buyer. Anything that's going to be a potential question of the buyer. The more that you can provide, the better the story you can tell in that marketing.
And then for the list of employees, are you giving salaries there, or is that already part of the P&L, I guess?
You can provide salaries, yes. So I would say whether they're part-time, full-time, yes, what they're being paid, whether it's hourly, salaried, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that does come up. We've had, situations where entire families are leaving a company, and some of them they're not necessarily the main operator, but they are employed. And so there's questions around that. Were they working for cheaper, for example, or, just because they were maybe getting a distribution from the company, how does that impact the buyer when those individuals are replaced?
Makes sense.
Good question. All right. After we collect that information, you're going to work with the broker on the determining the valuation range. And there is a process we will take you through by looking at your tax returns and using rule of thumb multiples. So that is the second step. The third step, which is kind of aligned with that one, is just adjusting that range to the specific risk of the business being valued. And what I mean by that is, at times there are distressed businesses that come to us and they might not be profitable, right? So they might be narrowly profitable. So we're able to assign a value to that business, or maybe it's an asset purchase. But if there's a multiple involved and the business is struggling or there's just different concerns there, it's probably going to have a lower valuation than a higher one, and then one where they're very profitable and growing and there's, growth potential there. So there will be a valuation range that you discuss with your broker in terms of what you want to see, what is possible in terms of evaluation for the business. So making sure that you understand that process and are on the same page with the broker is going to be really crucial as well. All right, next, I wanted to talk about 11 tips when selling your business, and I think these will be really crucial for you to have success. The first one is choosing the right broker. Kelly, what do you think? What do you think of when you think of, wanting the right broker? I'm just curious. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Experience, well, good communicator,
Yeah.
uh,
Not
networks.
someone who just lists the business and walks away, right?
Yeah, good communicator, knows what they're doing.
You can probably relate to that in terms of when a house gets listed, right? That the real estate agent is marketing the business and is really representing the seller, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with a business brokerage, making sure that they're marketing your business. For J&E, we do mailings, we do cold outreach, we have databases of buyers and sellers, and so we're often reaching out to them to see if we can find the right fit for the seller. So it's really important that you have somebody who is going to represent you well. And it takes a long time, which we'll get into to sometimes to sell a business, not every time. But you want to make sure you have somebody who's actively working for
Yeah,
you.
proactive for sure.
Good word. Um, Number two is making sure you get your financials in order. And we kind of covered that on the process, ensuring you have 2 to 3 years of financial statements, whether they're profit and loss or tax returns. And then the other thing that goes along with that is identifying the add backs for the broker. And the broker can assist you with that. But it's any one-time expenses or discretionary expenses that need to be added back to the valuation of the company. So what I mean by that could be owner salary there. You'll see that one-time expenses might be things like whether or not you write off your car or your meals. They typically look like write-offs. Anything that would be one-time discretionary things. So if you're really proactive and you want to work ahead of time, I would say identify those add backs and know that they are going to be asked for by the broker. That's really important so that the buyer can see the true earnings of a business and what they can expect to make and where they might even be able to cut expenses, right, when they're
Right.
considering buying it. So just making sure you have the financials in order and everything's organized when you're considering selling the business. Number three, understanding your business value. Like I mentioned, being on the same page with the broker. We use the model called the seller's discretionary earnings analysis, and we kind of outline that for any potential buyers reviewing your business. But you want to make sure that you are on the same page as the broker so that when the transaction comes to completion, it's going to be a smooth process and you're not going to be still negotiating or arguing in terms of that. And to go along with that, I would say be honest and transparent with the broker, with both the broker and the potential buyers. They might have questions about how you did things financially or why the business isn't growing at a certain rate or what they think you could do better. Make sure you're open and honest. You want to find the right fit for you. And so that's going to come only when you are open and honest. And you don't want to waste anybody's time if you get all the way to the contract phase, right? And you're spending money on an attorney. And maybe there's something you haven't been open and honest about, and the transaction doesn't go through. I've seen that. So you definitely want to be upfront so that you have a smooth process throughout the transaction.
Makes sense in any transaction, right?
Absolutely. You want to plan for confidentiality, and we touched on that a little bit. That business brokers often handle confidential transactions, and so to plan for that, that might look like sharing when someone can do a walkthrough of the property. If you have employees and you don't want them to know that your business is for sale, we see that often.
Yeah.
So plan for confidentiality. How is that going to be handled? What do you want said about the business so that it's not identified right away and until there's NDAs in place? There's, redacting information on employees, for example, or tax returns. Just making sure you have thought that through when you're thinking of selling the business, because you don't want to have to lose employees or things like that for not handling that sensitively. Number six, I would say, is the due diligence process. in the due diligence process that happens after your business has been signed, like you've signed a contract with a potential buyer, there's a due diligence period typically following that for a limited period of time where the buyer's going to want to review documents, things about your business. So some of those things might be leases, contracts, tax returns, payroll. And those items are usually shared somewhere in the process when there's a letter of intent to purchase the business. But just giving the buyer the opportunity to review that information and make sure that everything is as you said it was. So, you want to make sure that you've kind of gathered those materials, you know where those are so that it is a smooth process. And along with that, a lot of times I've seen sellers who don't have standard operating procedures in place, but they are requiring training or the buyer wants to be trained for a certain amount of time following the transaction. So sometimes they're scrambling at the last minute to create standard operating procedures or training materials or figure that out. So you just want to be prepared for that and making sure you've either completed that or you have a plan to complete that by the time you're going to sell your business. I will say that at J&E Business Group, I mentioned that we do marketing and operations. We can also assist with standard operating procedures. So that's an aspect of what we do to help companies grow. It's really important that you have them in place for efficiency, for in case anything happened to the owner or a key member of the team. But it also helps when businesses are ready to sell. So if that's something you're interested in pursuing and learning more about, we can absolutely help with that.
I have a question. How long is this due diligence period generally?
It can range, but I typically see like a 30-day period or like 1 to 2 weeks even after things are contracted. And it's after it's contracted because you don't want to disclose your actual clients at times or contracts until someone has actually moved forward and purchased it. But there's typically a clause in the contract around due diligence, giving the buyer the opportunity to review and confirm everything.
And then is there an opportunity to renegotiate if something comes up in there?
There can be. It depends on the asset purchase agreement that you work on with your attorney and how that would work.
Okay.
Yeah, good questions. Um, so number 7, being realistic about timeline and price. So we already talked about the price and being on the same page as your broker. That's going to be really helpful again to just have a smooth transaction, not having any second guessing on things when you're negotiating with the buyer, but also being realistic about the timeline. Now, we do see that when businesses, it's just like real estate, when businesses are priced right, or when they're marketed well, or they're very desirable, they can sell very quickly. They can sell in a day for maybe our database of potential buyers. We might have an offer very quickly. Um, it could take a month to 3 months. But a lot of our businesses can take up to 9 months. That's kind of what we tell people, and we do have a contract for a year because there's just, buying a business is a big deal. So people are thinking long and hard about it, usually when they find out that it's listed and they have a lot of questions and they're kind of analyzing the business before they ever consider buying it. So there's just a time period of that on behalf of the buyer, and then the negotiations, and then even the contractual period when they're working with the attorney. There's a lot of back and forth, and even that period can take, a month or two. So it really depends. You can close a business really, really quickly, within 30 days, just like real estate. But everything has to be just right for that to happen. So I would say discuss that timeline and what your expectations are with the broker and seeing if that's possible.
So thinking back of all the steps so far, and knowing that like 9 months is definitely, average, it sounds like.
Mhm.
If I was thinking to sell my business, I should probably connect with a broker a year
Now.
and a half before actually wanting, or 2 years, I more like ideally to get all ducks in a row, and maybe even longer if my books are pretty messy.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, sometimes we've done valuations and said, hey, if you wait a little bit longer and you get your revenue up, maybe your business would sell for this, right? Or we're giving them tips. And so it really depends, but having that open conversation is helpful.
yeah. Okay.
I have had businesses where they're like, hey, we want to sell by the end of the year, and there's 3 months out, and we've sold them.
Yeah.
But that is very rare and, takes, just the right timing.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, hopefully, if the, like, it's 2025, if you're wanting to sell your business in 2026, I'd say let's have a conversation on what it would look like to sell your business and by when. Um, so number 8, thinking about your transition as a seller, and by that I mean, what do you want to do next when after you sell your business? I think that that is always important to think about. Do you have like, are you relocating? Do you have another business in mind that you're going to run? Are you going to be available to help the buyer, transition and train them? And how long do you want to be involved? Um, Even things like, do you want equity in the business once you sell it, so that you can continue helping them and guiding them? So I mean, we see all different scenarios. Some people just, want a quick sale. Others don't. They really want to stay involved. And so making sure you know how you're really feeling because selling your business is a big deal. So, making sure you think about that transition is really important there. And along with that is focusing on the fit, not just the price. And by that I mean the buyer. Is the buyer the right fit? Do they have the right background for your business? Or would you need to train them a lot? Could they do it? What about their personality? If they're going to be the new owner of your business, are they the right fit for your employees? And not every seller cares about that, but I think if you want your business to thrive after you sell it, you're going to focus on that right fit, not just what you're going to get for it.
Yeah, that's important.
Considering how the valuation impacts financing. So this is a real fun one, because depending on how the buyer wants to purchase the business, right? If it's a smaller business, they might use a HELOC to purchase that business. Um, where a home equity line of credit, right, Kelly, on the house.
Yeah.
And that comes out of of the buyer's personal assets and their ability to buy, right? Then there's maybe you are working with a hard money lender or somebody who is helping you acquire that business. That we see that often, or investors that are investing. And then the other option would be an SBA loan or a small business administration loan. And if those are involved, and if an SBA loan is involved, it's important that the valuation for your business was done properly and vetted by an SBA lender, which we typically always do. And there's a lot of different criteria that the Small Business Administration has to go through in order to vet a business. And so it's just important that you know that, because not all businesses qualify for an SBA loan. So knowing how the valuation impacts financing is important because the broker is going to need to tell the buyer, hey, this business qualifies for an SBA loan or this one doesn't. Um, if you are going to move forward with a purchase, you'll either need to bring the financing on your own, whether it's, your personal cash or a hard money lender or a HELOC or some other means if it's not going to qualify. So just a heads up on that. And then an aspect of that, for example, in terms of how evaluation is done and structured would be if there's real estate involved in the transaction, in the business as an asset of the business. Typically, an SBA lender would tell you that the real estate value has to be 51% of the total valuation of the business. So these are things, there's a little tip for you from an SBA lender,
Yeah.
but these are things that you need to consider when structuring the total valuation of your business.
Interesting. And that's only for SBA loans, though, right?
That's for SBA loans. Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. So it can be structured differently, um, but you're going to need to bring a buyer that, has their own financing, or yeah, a way to purchase your business. Distressed businesses are not going to qualify, for example. So things to keep in mind there.
Right.
And then also, number 11, Kelly, consider the real estate. Again, if real estate is involved in the sale of your business, if you're selling the building, for J&E, we really require that the real estate is also listed under an agreement with a licensed realtor. It does not have to be on the MLS, but something you should know is that only the owner or the licensed agent can discuss the property. So if your building is not listed with an agent, they're not able to show the property and discuss with your potential buyers. So we work with licensed agents in that case to show the property and answer questions about the real estate. Kelly, can you tell everyone why that's important?
Well, I think it's the law, right? If you're selling real estate
That's
as
right.
a professional, you need to
Yeah.
be licensed in that field.
Yes, you cannot sell real estate or attempt to sell real estate without a license. So that's why, only a licensed agent is able to have those conversations about your building if you're a seller with real estate involved in the transaction. So we play by the book, and it's an important aspect for you to consider if you are selling your property. So
That's
the, so those are my tips today. Do you have any questions for me on the process or any of the tips in general? Anyone else on the call have any questions?
I think mine was more of just like preparing, and that's where I find it's so important for people in general, especially if they're getting close to retiring and wanting to figure out what they're going to do with their next step.
Yeah,
Really, it sounds like they should talk to you, years in advance.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be, but ideally, to have the best preparing and best outcome is to talk at least a year or two in advance to actually making that move.
yeah. And no offense against any attorneys, but a lot of times they undervalue the business and or will say it's not worth it or it's too long of a process, but that's not necessarily the case. And so I would say give it a shot and sell your business. Don't just close the doors because you're gonna have a great return on investment if you do it. And plus you are helping somebody else, whether they are going to be a first-time business owner or they want to expand their business. So I'd say, and it helps the local economy to do that as well. It helps the clients. It's a win-win for everyone. But yeah, we've seen all kinds of things where sellers are really surprised on how much they could make from selling their business. And yes, there's a lot involved. But it also is pretty straightforward and simple if you're able to gather your materials and stay organized about it and then let the broker manage all the conversations on your behalf. it can, it's a win-win. So
Yeah, and the question about the real estate. So if they have real estate involved, they don't have to sell it along with the business, do they? It
they
makes
they
sense
don't
often, but they don't have to. Like what
they
if,
don't have to. Yeah.
yeah, they could sell it separately.
Yeah, and sometimes, the building is leased. They don't own the business. They don't own
Yeah,
the
which is
And
common,
then that becomes an aspect that you're negotiating with the landlord, right? And
right?
that's put into the contract as well. That's something that needs to be discussed. But yeah. So yeah, you could keep the real
This is
estate
really
and sell the business, and we can do both. So like I said, we partner with licensed realtors. We've been doing this since 2014. And yeah.
Yeah, I think this is really helpful. Thank you for
Awesome. Yeah, thanks
sharing
for
all your
jumping
tips.
on here. I'm really glad to share, and we'll see what happens. But thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thanks, Kristi.
Bye-bye.